So come up on stage. We're so grateful to have you as a speaker today, Nancy.
Thank you.
And just a funny synchronization too, Nancy and I happened to go to Ember and Ice, which is a sauna,
Yeah, the other night.
and we met in the sauna this week, and it's called Ember and Ice by coincidence. So
We knew each other before, but we showed up together.
That's one of those synchronicities.
yes,
Right. What do you want to hang on?
Yes.
Is that just this top?
yeah, just this one, the arrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
The arrow. So, welcome everyone. And first of all, I want to thank Anna and Creative Mornings and Junkyard Social Club for creating such a creative space. I mean, this is amazing, isn't it? Let's give them all a round of applause. So, ironically, as soon as Anna asked me to talk about the topic of Ember, that's all she told me. So I had to look it up. I was like, I know what this means. You know, it's that little coal there under the, and the definition, just like she said, was a dying piece of coal or wood in a fire. And I really hooked into dying because of, you know, we want to think about the phoenix and the bonfire and the sparks. And it really got me thinking for a long time about Ember and what is that? And so I thought this morning I want to tell you a story. She made it, the end. No, just kidding. But I was in college in the mid-'80s, graduating. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do with my life. And I thought, well, I can't go wrong. I'll major in business. I majored in finance, believe it or not. And looking back now, I think I was really doing it indirectly for my parents. You know, they never said, you got to do this. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to please. And I aim to please. And so with exactly one suit, 2 pairs of pantyhose, and the tie-on, you know, bow tie for women back then, I went into the cubicle working for the Federal Reserve Bank of our nation's country, the bank of our country, in Denver, Colorado, on the 16th Street Mall, where I immediately was extremely depressed in the little gray cubicle. Now, pre-internet, really pre-computers, I had stacks of three-ring binders, and they were just, here, you have to get so dressed up and be in this 3 by 3 foot, literally gray cubicle back then. There was no open room like there would be now, or pizza day. It was just horrifying. And every day I'd go out onto the mall, and I would either call my mom or my therapist, and I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. And finally one day I was in the employee cafeteria, and this was only 2 months in. My mom claimed 6 weeks. And I heard everybody in the room talking about what they wished they had done with their lives. Now, these people were my peers. They were no more than 30 or 35 at most. And I thought, holy shit, I've got to get the hell out of here now. And so with that, I got up and I said to my manager, I need to go talk to Ralph, who was the one that hired me for big bucks back then. And nothing to go to, nothing at all. I walk into the big corner glass office. I've got my top security badge on because we're analyzing banks and capital and asset management, equity and liquidity, and it all didn't matter diddly squat to me. And so I go in there without a thought in my head, which was actually really, really brave and smart. I thought it was really dumb at the time, but I didn't let anything like, oh, the money is good, oh, I'm going to buy a house and the 401k is good. I just went in there and I said, you know, I'm really sorry to have cost you money so far, but I can't go to DC and do all this training. This is just not for me. And he was convinced. I was overwhelmed with the work, and I said, no, I'm not overwhelmed. I know this is not for me. So I said, I'll give you a month notice. And he said, well, if you're sure it doesn't really work that way, I need your badge. I'll walk you to the door. And I went, oh, okay, because I had about 10 cents in my bank account, no shit. And I walk outside, he thanks me, and there I am, literally standing on the 16th Street Mall. And all of a sudden I let out this primal scream, and I went, ah! You know, I was like so excited. And this guy looks at me and goes, like, oh, you're okay. And then it started to sink in, like, oh, this is going to go over well with the folks, you know. Just got this degree for 4 years, and I quit that, and you know. And so then the anxiety starts hitting me, like, well, what do I do? And everybody, when I was out in Denver, they'd be like, I guess it was kind of granola, not so much. They were like, where are you from, Boulder? And I thought, well, what am I going to do today? I'll drive to Boulder. And I've never been there, even though my dad graduated from CU, and my brother was born here. And I came over Highway 36. You all know that view. And I went, oh my God. And place is so important. You know, I bring that up because we have to be happy with where we're at. And atmosphere is so key, and lifestyle. I lucked out. So I drive into Boulder, and I just keep driving until it's right down baseline. I hit the Flatirons, I park the car, and I just keep walking, and I'm like, I'm gonna live here. Then I start thinking, well, doing what? And I literally thought back, my senior year in college, I had taken one jewelry making class. And my professor said, what are you doing taking this job for the Fed? You've got this talent. And it was the first time, even though I'd always been creative in my young life, that somebody called it out. And I thought, well, I think I know what I want to do. And I want to make jewelry. And I had no idea. And I thought, well, I'm an artist. Maybe I'm an artist. And I thought, start saying it, start acting it. And that's what I did. And when I look back now, the bonfires are always the moments that are the hardest. We want to think it's the great achievement. I was the creative director for Brooks and Dunn, or a movie with, so-and-so wearing all my jewelry. It's those hard times that are really the bonfires that the sparks that get us going into what we're here to do. And I know I was asked by Anna to be a speaker about Ember because of the alchemy of metals, probably, right? But what I've learned in the process of 38 years now, full-time, as an artist, making my living, raising 2 kids, is really the ember is the glow, like you were saying, somebody said, of where we're taking our lives. And I don't know if you know this, but the average man in our country lives to be about 70. The average woman, 75. Look it up. Now, I think we're different in Boulder. I'd like to believe, but juxtapose that with a stat I just heard on a podcast that 70% of Americans would leave their jobs today if they could. I don't think those two statistics happened by accident. And I am such a believer now, even though I was asked to speak about jewelry, my real passion now is about crafting a life from meaning. I know so many kids coming out from college right now that, imagine the hope and healing that needs to happen for them and where they're at. It just breaks my heart sometimes. And I know I'm not alone. And the other part Our older people going, you know what? How many years do I have left? You know, if you want to do the math, you're a woman 75 minus your age times 365 in a year, 365 days. You got about 4,000 or 5,000 days left if you're my age, you know? And that's, I don't say that to be morbid, but to say there's an awakening going on in our country, and I think we all know it. And I believe, this is a different subject altogether, but AI is another thing that's we're losing so many jobs in the marketplace. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it we can do, to make our lives more meaningful? Because I really believe we're here for a passion and purpose. And that's the ember that's glowing, that's forever, you've been knocked down, so you getting back up and sharing that purpose. And we're all here for that reason, and I love that. So I want to show you a little bit, to back up, there I was at 22 with nothing to go to. But this idea is a terrible shot, but you get the picture. This is the very first show I did. It was outside of Chicago in Hinsdale, Illinois. It was a desk with a glass case and a couple of directors' chairs, and I was on my way. I sold a pair of earrings that day, and I felt like I owned Chicago. I was like driving home, like, yeah. And meanwhile, I left this huge job, but I wanted to be free, and it just rang out in me. So I thought I'd show you that slide as mere beginners. Looks like I won something, I don't know, maybe best booth. This is where I'm at now. This is at 17th and Pearl Street in Boulder. Share it with several people from friends of mine. Dona's here today, raise your hand. And and we just are in love with it. We've got over 43 artists and rotating shows every couple of months. So come and see us. We're next to the Laughing Doe, Two Soul Sisters. But I skip ahead. Anyway, I had always been drawn to silver, very much the Western theme. People go, where are you from? Arizona, New Mexico, no, Colorado. And I'm also in love with the written word. So I call my pieces wearable shrines of intention, because they're little journal entries of where I am going or what I need to hear. In the beginning, it's interesting. I've been kind of looking at, here's the latest one, no keys. And that's on a little Cupid doll, ceramic head doll with the bone skull. This is an actual ironing board. I love doing big found object pieces. They fit in great here. So I began collecting equipment. I had no money. I'd go to yard sales. I would buy shears. I would buy an anvil. I'd talk to these old farmers, and it was so interesting. And in that, here's some more latest ones. Forgive yourself. Her trust was not on the branch, but her wings. Stay close. There's definitely a theme in my work these days, which is about hope and healing and going for it. And when I think back on the older pieces, they were more like feeling small today, where I would take two old tintypes, like a child's head on an old woman's body, and one that says learning to fly, another one, claim your soul. I was really seeking, and I still am, but now it's much more empowered, trust your wings. And with that comes so many branches. When you begin doing what you love, right? From that, so many pathways. And one of them, the most, is sharing it with people, sharing creativity, sharing the studio. I'm going to Africa in the fall to see Joan. She created a girls' foundation after her best friend died at 13 in childbirth to a 65-year-old man. And she was so devastated by it, she's 23 now, that she founded this girl's school because she knows that education and the trades, namely creativity, they're so creative over there that, you know, she wants them to have a way to make a living and get themselves out of situations like that. That is illegal in Africa as well, but it's very overlooked, you know. Well, we didn't see that. You just keep going, Mr. So-and-so, you know. And I love teaching workshops. This is in my studio down in Tucson, Arizona, and I just love that because it's true, right? If I don't make art, I get sad. So, you know, so one of the pathways I just love, this was a grief workshop for a 2-day, is it a 2-day, 4-day? I have my friend Lori here who did a lot of the dance. Yeah, every day we had so much fun. And this was homage to a child or a loved one, a pet that they'd lost. And just the stories and the empowerment that comes from art, that really is the greatest gift I have, way beyond money. You know, I think at the end of our lives, we don't think about how great the house was, but whose lives we touched, you know? And I think we're seeing this in our country, like it's a grassroots movement now, and it's really happening. It's every single one of us going out there and smiling at young people, saying, everything, what can I help you with, you know? And being together. I just love it. So this is more than a life-size silver vagina that I made for Gloria Steinem. Yeah. And so that's the craziest thing probably I've made in my career. Yeah, I went to the Makers Conference in La Jolla, and she was presented with this. I melted down hundreds of purity rings. You know, those are. Oh my God. She's a rock star in her leather jeans at 84 in that picture. She's even older now. And she loved it. She said it's on her mantle. Yeah. And, you know, so who knew walking out of the Fed that day that it would lead to all these things, these incredible experiences and relationships, and not just famous people, but everyday people too. But Ricky Lee Jones, next to on the right, she's at Jazz Fest in my booth there, just incredible. And then we got this slutty picture of Tom Cruise, and I don't know if you saw the great 80s rock opera. What's it called? I'm blanking right now, but he wore all the jewelry, and Alec Baldwin. This was the belt he wore, and it was a big concha belt. So Warner Brothers actually called me, Rock of Ages, sorry, is the name, and don't watch it for any kind of intellectual. Watch it for the jewelry. I went to the Boulder Theater, or a theater in Boulder with 9 other girlfriends. And every time they did a close-up of his crotch with the buckle, we'd all scream. And I think they all thought he was so hot. I tell people that's the closest I've ever got to his crotch. Anyway, when Warner Brothers called me, they said, well, you know, this is a rock opera, blah, blah, blah. Could you come up with some jewelry? And I said, sure. When do you need it by? They go, tomorrow. And they meant it. You know, you hear that about the film industry. Well, it's true. And so I stayed up all night. And what I started thinking about Jim Morrison. And he was the inspiration for that. As soon as I overnighted everything, they were like, hell yeah. And so he kept breaking it. They were renting all the jewelry. Believe it or not, they rent jewelry. And then they called me one day and they said, he'd like to buy that. He you know, keep fixing it, and this is so special to him that he's going to keep it because it really got him into character for this. So anyway, that was super fun. Another pathway that this amazing ride has taken me is, no pun intended. So I bought a vintage Airstream about 17 years ago now, way before it was like the thing. And she's a 1974 Airstream Ambassador. Bought it for $2,000 in the middle of Oklahoma. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never driven an RV in my freaking life. But I had this idea to go around the country and interview creatives. And it's still ongoing and pitching it now. But Art Saves is my motto because without it, I think I'd be gone by now, whether it was high school, moving around, things that happened. Like at one point in my life, I went through a terrible breakout. Everything had gone wrong, except the dog didn't die. It was like a bad country music song, you know? But the dog, thank God. So after, I'm trying to come up from things, and I'm working, and I just had no sense of meaning. And if I was ever clinically depressed, it was then. I shut my business down. All the boxes were in the garage. Sweet Bird was done. And I was pissed off and sad, and I put together a resume. And I thought, well, I just want to go get a paycheck. Screw this is too hard. And one day, after about 6 months, I was endlessly, therapy, hiking. I'd hike 10 miles and not remember where I was. I was in that kind of head. I'm sure you guys have been through things in your life where you're like, I don't know how I did that. So I come into my garage one day, all the boxes and the bench with thousands of nail drill holes at 17th and Pearl. You can see it, but and I just started literally like looking at it like a stranger would, not my own life. And one thing led to another, and I started opening boxes. And I started digging through all my found objects. And 6 hours later, which felt like 6 minutes, when you're in the middle of something so creative, and you're like, I can't believe 6 hours have gone by. And I walk out into the sun, and there's this belt buckle, first I had ever made, and it had Our Lady of Guadalupe on it, and it had on the banner, Release the Vision. And I literally, it sounds woo-woo, but I do not know where that came from. And was not religious or very spiritual now, much more so from all the art over the years. That's for another talk. But I walked out and I said, release the vision? Release the vision? And I thought, what is this? So I walk in the house, I literally ripped up the resumes, I threw them away, and I got back to work. But this time it was different. This time I was in charge, and I went, you're going to create everything in your life from meaning. And I called my mom, and I said, I'm going to make $1 million this year. I'm setting the bar high. And she goes, good for you. You go for it. Well, we grossed $1 million that year. And I had 12 people, so working like a dog. We had Sundance catalog, all these catalogs, all these wholesale accounts, and it was literally, that to me was taking that ember that was still in there, in that garage when I started creating, into this bonfire. And to this day, I'm so proud of that because I didn't lose my house. It was during the 08-09 recession too. And I had a huge mortgage. And that was the motivator, really. I always say hunger is the strongest motivator because I'll be damned if I was going to lose that house and go bankrupt. And so I knew I had to go for it. And I can't tell you the pride of doing something on your own. So if any of you are considering taking that leap and doing something else that has meaning, more meaning in your life, gotta do it. We don't have that much time. And so this is still, whoops. Oh, I thought we had more jewelry. No? Anyway, I really feel that from the fire, you know, I love talking about, you know, the phoenix rising. I do a lot of that with my work. But I love this quote: "You will rise from the ashes, but the burning comes first. For this, darling, you must be brave." And that is my message to all of you today, is like, let's dig inside what is within. And I teach a class called Release the Vision. It's going to be a 2-day class, because a lot of people are like, well, I get that. That's obvious. How do I access that more without being vague, right? So that is what spurs me the most in teaching, but I do it through creativity. It's through collage and paint and metalsmithing and collecting things that are near and dear to your heart, so that you can access what that is for you. It may not be jewelry making at all. It might be, I want to go work at a winery. That's my dream. I want to live in Sonoma, and I want to, you know, whatever that dream is. Because being an artist is not so much about visual or musical. It's about creating a life you love, because we're all artists of our lives. And that's where we will never compare to AI. They will never compare to us, I shall say, because that heart and that ember that's glowing. So I'm going to open it up to any questions, but first I want to read you one of my all-time favorite poems. It's called "The Invitation" by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. And apparently she's Canadian. She was at a dinner party one night, and she was so sick of the surface talk and the small talk, and she went home. She was really just troubled by it. And so she wrote this poem, and it's amazing. The Invitation. "It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you've touched the center of your own sorrow, if you've been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and close from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, be realistic, remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you were telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty every day. And if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours or mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes! It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. So I'm.
If anyone has questions, we still have a couple of minutes.
Say the poet's name.
Orion, Mountain Dreamer. Yeah, what a great poem. And I just love it because it really addresses the fire too. Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions to Nancy?
Would you talk about those the 2-day workshop you mentioned?
Yeah.
Like what format or what's the next?
Yeah, it'll be Saturday, Sunday at the shop we have in Boulder at 17th and Pearl. And I've got business cards, so as soon as I set that date, I would love to have each and every one of you here and try to make it as affordable as possible for everyone. Yeah. Yeah, the rich.
Yeah.
Um,
No questions to Nancy at this point? So, thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you.
That was amazing.